Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, so have you ever looked at the history of music and just felt like, I don't know, something major was missing? Like the standard story we're all taught is just a little bit too ordinary? Well, today we are strapping in for an absolutely mind-bending journey. We're going to dive into Kodwo Eshun's radical epic text more brilliant than the sun. And look, this isn't your typical music history lesson. It's literally a total rewiring of reality that changes the very DNA of how we actually hear sound. So let's start with a big question. Does technology make music cold, emotionless, and, well, unhuman? It's a massive assumption we all tend to make, right? I mean, critics are constantly lamenting the so-called disembodiment of the human by technology. We've been told forever that real, authentic soul requires acoustic instruments and that electronic music is just distant and robotic. But the source material we're digging into today challenges this completely. Eshun basically argues that we need to trade everything we think we know about music history for a glimpse of its actual mechanized future.
All right, so here is the core conflict we're dealing with. On one hand, we have the traditionalist view. Traditional music journalism acts like this giant inertia engine, constantly trying to keep Black music rooted in the street, firmly in the past, and tied to this idea of pure natural emotion. It demands a confession, a social context. But on the flip side, Eshun introduces what he calls the future rhythm machine. He argues that the music itself is actually alien, it's technological. It deliberately turns its back on those roots and instead hurtles toward an unknown, futuristic space. The music literally wants to be a synthetic recombiner, but the traditionalists, they just want to keep it grounded.
So who's the mastermind behind this massive shift in thinking? Well, meet Kodwo Eshun. And right off the bat, he explicitly rejects being called a simple cultural critic. He refers to himself instead as a concept engineer. I love that term. He takes the traditional paradigm we were just talking about and flips the whole shebang upside down. Instead of dragging music back down to earth, he reveals this hidden sci-fi world of sound. It's this omnidirectional exploration into the secret life of machines that have literally been co-evolving right alongside us. Now, to really understand his world, we absolutely need to grasp this crucial concept: sonic fiction, or phonofiction. Basically, it's the exact nexus where science fiction and sound intersect. In this space, musicians are no longer just, artists playing tunes. They are totally transformed into sonic scientists or audio alchemists. They're basically in laboratories testing the extreme limits of human biology and machine capability. It's a completely new vocabulary for a completely new reality. And this leads us to Eshun's really radical thesis. Machines do not distance you from your emotions. In fact, it's a hyper-embodiment. Sound machines don't numb us at all. They actually make us feel more intensely across a way broader band of emotional spectra than ever before. So it's not a disembodiment of the human. It's a profound, hypersensual connection. The machine amplifies our rates of becoming alien, and it actually physically intensifies our bodily experience. To see how all this builds historically, welcome to World 4. We're stepping into the late 1960s and 1970s. Eshun calls this the jazz fusion era, which is essentially an Afrodelic space program. But here is the truly fascinating part. He points out that the last 2 decades of jazz have acted as a collective machine for forgetting this exact era. Traditionalists absolutely hated this period because players like Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock engineered jazz into alien world electronics. It was a massive, awe-inducing departure that history has largely just tried to bury. So how exactly did they do it? Well, with what Eshun brilliantly terms acoustic prosthetics. We're talking about wah-wah pedals, echoplex units, Moog synthesizers, clavinets. Now, these might seem like totally standard studio gear to us today, but back then, producers like Tio Macero and these avant-garde musicians transformed these everyday effects into literal instruments. They became electric mutators, grafting together unicorn sounds and centaur sounds. They were no longer just, say, modifying a trumpet or a guitar. They were generating entirely new mutant textures from scratch. And this wild process brought about the era of schizophonia. This is a term originally coined by R. Murray Schafer, but Eshun applies it here to this specific musical evolution. It's essentially the audible inferno of the post-war soundscape. See, schizophonia happens when industrial communications split a sound completely from its original physical source. Think about it for a second. When you can't see what is actually producing the sound you're hearing, it creates this invisible excitement or even fear for your nervous system. These electronic effects completely dissolve the traditional organization of the instrument. The sound became so incredibly alien, it actually created an audio menagerie. The percussion turned into what Eshun describes as an insectile texture rhythm. I mean, it literally sounded like unseen insectile life forms chittering and shrieking at you. And what's so amazing is how the musicians adapted to this. On the sleeve for his 1975 album Dark Magus, Miles Davis is actually wearing bug green fly shades. He was visually adapting to this electric insect land, using those shades to access the magnified vision required to navigate this reticulated, highly technological jazz. Meanwhile, inside the studio, this evolved into the electronic swarm program. Eshun references the cyberneticist Kevin Kelly to explain that a literal electronic ecology was emerging, where one machine's input is another machine's output. It wasn't just a human playing an instrument anymore, no way. It was this Medusa complex where sound machines formed food webs and actively preyed upon each other. Like a clavinet fed into a fuzzwah pedal, producing a mutant boa constrictor tone. The machines were feeding off of one another, mutating to create entirely new sonic environments. But, this wasn't just happening in the audio, it was highly visual too. Welcome to the electrical continuum, where tribal technology arrives from a marauding future. The album covers from this Afrodelic era were pure sonic fiction. You had Madi Clarwain painting paradisical girl-boy cyborgs. You had Tadanori Yoku painting tractor beams pulling UFOs right out of underwater cities. You had Herbie Hancock depicted as an Afronaut, literally piloting a UFO down onto an ancient Assyrian runway. It was this incredible anachronistic clash where ancient magic and high-tech science fiction chased each other down. All right, let's fast forward a bit. We're moving from the experimental jazz studios of the 70s straight to the hip-hop decks of the 1980s. This is the era of transmaterializing the breakbeat. Here, the focus shifts entirely to the DJ, the mixer, and the turntable. But as Eshun is quick to point out, we really shouldn't view early hip-hop just as a simple street-level block party phenomenon. We actually need to view it as advanced breakbeat science. Hip-hop pioneer Grandmaster Flash actually summarized this shift perfectly. He said, "After I took the title, I knew I had to start going to a laboratory, so to speak, and invent new ideas." This quote just hits the nail on the head. Early hip-hop wasn't just passive playback. Flash viewed his setup as a legitimate research center. The DJ was a sonic scientist, stepping into the lab, rigorously investigating the microscopic building blocks of a beat.
So let's break down his exact scientific process. Step 1. Isolate the specific breakbeat from a record. Step 2. Cross the threshold of micro-rhythm. Flash would break that beat down to its absolute smallest components. We're talking its 8th and 16th notes. Step 3. Replicate it. By isolating and repeating those tiny microfragments, he formed the actual DNA of rhythmic psychedelia. Eshun actually frames Flash's name and his techniques as this awesome fusion of a comic superhero and a martial artist, utilizing a deep, rigorous scientific understanding of sound.
And to pull this off, Flash relied on what Eshun calls conceptechnics. This is such a brilliant concept. Basically, it means a conceptual technology, where a physical machine, in this case the turntable, literally becomes a state of mind for the operator. By mythologizing the decks as the wheels of steel, Flash completely transformed the humble record player. It was no longer just a thing for playing a song. It became a machine capable of extracting and melding entirely new mind states directly from a record collection. And out of that concept technique came this absolute gem of a term, scratchadalia. Eshun defines it as conscientious desecration. Think about it. When a DJ scratches, they aren't just making a fun rhythmic noise. It is the literal noise of physical artifacts, the records themselves, being obliterated into streams of vocal vinyl matter. The DJ is scientifically destroying a completed piece of art to engineer an entirely new form of sonic life. It's wild. So what does this all mean for us, for you, watching this explainer right now? Well, under Eshun's paradigm, you are not aesthetes. You are kinestists. You are sensationalists. When you listen to this music, you aren't just passively appreciating art or judging its historical street value. No, you are actively participating in a full-body sensory mutation. The music is an applied art technology designed specifically to amplify your physical, sensational experience. You are being willingly mutated by intimate machines. And that takes us straight into the laboratories of our modern era. The bedroom, the party, the dance floor, the rave. These aren't just places to hang out or have a drink with friends. In the world of sonic fiction, these are the actual labs where our 21st century nervous systems are actively being assembled. These are the matrices of the future, where humans and sound machines co-evolve together in real time. Ultimately, this whole text is a really powerful call to arms. It tells us, be prepared, be ready to trade everything you know about the history of music for a single glimpse of its future. It's a demand to drop the boring, traditional, backwards-looking notions of musical history. We have got to stop cramming everything into a comfortable little box that demands a street-level origin story, and instead we need to embrace the sheer exhilarating strangeness of the future rhythm machine. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Next time you put on your headphones, I want you to ask yourself, are you just listening to a playlist, or are you a mutant being incubated in womb speakers? It completely changes how you look at your own record collection, doesn't it? We are all part of this incredible ongoing sonic fiction. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring those future frequencies.